It is disgusting. Our damn government is disgusting the way it bends over backwards to this sort of stuff. So afraid. So worried. Don't want to offend. Apologizing. You know what? I want to apologize. I want to apologize to the U.S. service personnel. You men and women in uniform. You men and women in combat. You men and women going into combat. I want to apologize to you for this jerk who's the commander-in-chief, for this jerk who's the Secretary of State, for this jerk who's the Secretary of Defense, for the whole damn bunch of them. I apologize to you and your families. Now, that's an apology that needs to be made.
Some choice words there from radio host Mark Levin. His fiery reaction to the president's apology for the accidental burning of Korans in Afghanistan by U.S. troops, triggering days of violent protests and costing 4 American soldiers their lives. The burning of the Korans did. The president apologized, and that's been extremely controversial since then. Christopher Hahn is the former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer. Radio host Chris Plant also joins me. He's host of the Chris Plant Show. Hearing Mark Levin, it's like hearing Rush Limbaugh. It gives you an eye into how conservatives are feeling about the issues of the day. And you could hear, Chris Plant, Mark Levin is incensed at this apology, and so are many, not just on the right, though, not just on the right. Some more moderate folks, too, think it was the wrong move. I want to ask you whether this is going to go away for the president as a political matter.
Well, certainly in the so-called mainstream news media, I think they're eager to put it to rest right now. But this apology from the president to all of the potentially offended people of the world is something that we really ought to be paying attention to. And the response that the president got in Afghanistan to his words of kindness and comfort were perhaps not what he expected. But there should be more words from the president at this point about the Americans that have been murdered as a result of this incident. And look, the president is famous for 2 things at this point, I think, right? Apologizing and leading from behind. And Mark Levin is expressing the feelings that a lot of Americans are feeling right now. The president can't stop apologizing. He sent his Defense Department officials out to apologize in Virginia. They can't stop apologizing. And, the reality is, as Mark Levin suggested, we should be carpet bombing the Taliban in response to the attacks.
I'm going to get, Christopher, I want to get your reaction. But I want to get it from you in the context of this as well, because the second point we want to hit on is this report that Catherine Herridge brought us yesterday, that at the same time, we're apologizing for an accidental, decision by our U.S. soldiers. We are paying $750,000 of taxpayer money so that suspected terrorists at Gitmo can play soccer on a beautiful field with AstroTurf. And it does raise questions about our priorities in terms of how we approach these battles.
Well,
your thoughts?
First on Mark Levin, I think it's time for him to catch the last train to Clarksville, because the train has definitely left the station on his mind. He worked in the Reagan administration. He should know better. Okay, there are people in the Middle East who are on fire right now because of what happened there. And the president is trying to calm the situation down to protect our men and women in the field. And he should know better. He is really out of line. He sounds like Rush Limbaugh, but really what he's trying to do is trying to be Rush Limbaugh. And if we have to replace Rush Limbaugh, as I have said before, it needs to be with Chris Plant. And that's it. Now, let me explain. Now, let me explain the other part
Chris
about...
would probably take that job in a heartbeat.
I bet he would.
Well, I'll let you finish your point. Go ahead.
But, on the Gitmo situation, now, I've worked in government and I've worked on campaigns. And you could say a whole lot of things on campaigns, but then when you get faced with the reality of governing, you've got to make decisions based on that reality. And the reality is the president cannot at this time close down Gitmo. As for the turf field there...
It's not closing down and spending almost $1 million of taxpayer money so they can play soccer on AstroTurf.
Well,
are 2 different things.
It's kind of hard to grow grass there, I'm sure. So, they're buying the turf to save some money. But that said, listen, you're keeping people in a detention situation. You got to exercise them so they stay healthy, so you're spending less money on health care at the end of the day.
Wow,
we're going to keep them there. Hey,
wow.
It's a reach, I know.
Chris Plant, and therefore we have to have a walking trail, exercise equipment, 3 recreation facilities, and 1 indoor, 1 outdoor, new soccer field, and on it goes. Among those who are going to be taking advantages, Osama bin Laden's personal cook and driver. These are suspected terrorists.
I agree.
No,
and
they're
listen,
not suspected. they're not suspected anything. They're detainees. They're prisoners of war. They're unlawful enemy combatants. They're jihadis, and jihadis love two things: death and soccer, apparently. And I was going to make a joke about Michelle Obama wanting to exercise them to keep their health care costs down, but you actually went there with a straight face. I find that to be amazing. Look, the president just the other day is talking about slashing health care for our troops and for our veterans while we're spending $750,000 for an AstroTurf. Now, look, Chris, when you and I were kids, we used to go out in the field and take 4 T-shirts and throw them down and call it a baseball field.
Absolutely.
And these guys at Gitmo, who are jihadis, are serial mass murderers, can take a couple of T-shirts or thobes or something and throw them down and make soccer goals out of them, as kids do all over the world every day.
Something tells me we don't know the full story about these soccer fields and trails, and I'm sure it's not just for the detainees. We have lots of people
They say that it reduces
too.
behavioral problems, that they get out there, they exercise, it leads to following the rules. And I don't know, Chris, you tell me, Christopher Hahn, aren't those on the left going to have an objection to this? They want to Gitmo closed. Now they're seeing it, getting all the bells and whistles with soccer fields.
Obviously people on the left wanted it closed, but they're not governing right now. On a campaign, you can talk about whatever you want. On Mark Levin's radio program, he can curse and cry and call the president all sorts of names. But when it comes down to reality, the president is winning on foreign policy, and Republicans know that. And as far as Gitmo goes, it's more of a problem for the left than the right. The right wanted to keep it open. So if we're going to keep it open, we might as well make it something that's going to be there for the long term and make sure the facilities are there that they need.
Wow, it's like Pepperdine University soccer field, $750,000 AstroTurf. Please throw down a couple of T-shirts and throw a ball out into the field, and they'll play soccer just fine.
We're broke. I don't know if anybody mentioned it. Necessary in the Caribbean? Isn't it like can't you grow grass down there?
They don't gotta mow, Megan.
Okay.
It's one less
There's a thing called Bermuda.
All right, I gotta leave it at
It's not like they can hire somebody that they're not quite sure where they're from to mow that lawn.
Mission accomplished. It's a world-class soccer facility.
If we can't trust them to mow the lawn, why are we letting them have access to the soccer field at their leisure 20 hours a day?
We don't want the terrorists to have lawnmowers. Then they've already won.
We're going to have an annual jihad
I got to run. Thanks, guys.
Okay.